something that we've learned along the way is just the options that are out there within IVF. When we started the process, it's just so black and white, like this is what your doctor says, this is what you do. And the more we've learned, there's just so many routes.
Ways.
There's different medications, there's different options within IVF as well. And so that's just been an interesting process to learn. And so for me, we did IVF for the first time, and I got pregnant with our twin daughters, and that time we did a fresh cycle. So we actually, they did the egg retrieval, they created the embryos, and we never froze those two. We actually just used them right away. And then we chose with my son and my third pregnancy with my daughter, we chose to do natural cycles where I was not taking as many medications, and we were following my cycle more instead of manipulating everything. And so it really just cut back on the hormones and the medications that I had to take, which for me, knowing that I had tubal issues, in my mind, I was like, well, then I'm probably actually fertile. Like, it's just that problem. So, I mean, I wasn't having any other issues. So I was like, I feel like I could probably manage, my body will manage
produce the hormones that it
and
needs
do what
to
it's
produce.
supposed to do, because that my tubes weren't going to affect that. And so, so we had success with that. But with my third pregnancy, then the doctor's office gave me a really hard time actually about doing the natural cycle, because they were growing and they quit doing things on the weekends. So it was like they were all about timing things, which I understand. Like they don't want to be in there all the time, and I get that. But I remember them giving me a very hard time about it. And they actually canceled one of my cycles, and then I had to do it the following month. And that was another thing that I think that surprised me, just not feeling as supported. And in that time, I had one doctor for my first two pregnancies, and then he retired, and I got a new doctor, and he was just very different. And I did like him, and he was good. So he just had a different approach. And
very different. There was like an old school approach and a new school approach.
But the biggest difference was, like, my previous doctor had said, like, this is what I think, but what do you want me to do? I'll do it. But I mean, he would tell me, I think you're wrong, and I don't think this is going to work, but if you want me to do it, I'll do it. But I appreciated that because I was like, I want to make the decision.
Still be in control.
And that worked for us, and it was what I needed at the time. And then my new doctor was very much like, I know best. This is how we do things. This is what makes us successful. You need to do it the way that we want you to do it. And that was very difficult. So I did still do my natural cycle with Marin, but then when I went to have our fourth child and we had a fail the first time, he was automatically like, okay, no more natural cycles. Clearly this isn't working for you, which was funny because
you had to. That did work.
Yes, it had worked every other time. And there were other factors there that ended up becoming so with my third pregnancy, I got 2 weeks in. So we did our frozen embryo transfer, and then within 2 weeks, I was having severe allergic reactions to the progesterone and oil that you have to take every single day.
Yes.
And it's already a painful,
not fun experience.
Shot. It's like definitely the worst one.
It is, for sure.
In this process. But I mean, I was getting hives. I was like itching all over my body. I woke up one morning, my face was swollen, and that was at the point when I had to send them like a picture of me, and they were like, you need to stop taking that.
Yep.
And so I had to switch to a suppository type of progesterone, and then actually so I never went back on that medication again for my following transfers. That all failed ultimately. And so that seemed to be a factor for sure in the success later on when we were using our frozen embryos and we had so many fails.
And so the ironic piece of this is that we both developed the same allergy to progesterone in oil. For me, my first 2 transfers that gave us our daughter and our twin boys were frozen transfers, so I wasn't able to transfer right away after egg retrieval. So in that case, when you're doing a frozen transfer, you basically have to trick your body and your uterus into being ready to accept an embryo. So that's why all these hormones come into play. And so those 2 frozen transfers worked for us, and the medications were fine and everything was great. And then we went back to do a 4th transfer and a 5th transfer, which both ended in miscarriages. And so then 6th transfer, I had the same scenario with developing an allergic reaction to the progesterone. It was the same thing. My eyes swelled up, my hands swelled up. I had severe itching on my hands, like the kind that drives you, like you think you're going crazy. Large welts all over my body. And again, I had to send them pictures and they're like, yeah, you should stop that right away. We're going to change you. And they thought it was like an oil-based issue, that the oil that the progesterone was in, I had developed a reaction to that because it's a sesame oil, and that's like can be a highly allergic oil. So they changed that for me right away, and it did not make a difference. In that scenario, for that transfer, we ended up getting pregnant, testing positive in my blood work, and then like around like that 5-week mark, lost the embryo. And so we did it again, a 7th and an 8th time. Like we did it again with the same process, and it felt a little bit like they weren't believing how severe this reaction was.
They did put you on a steroid or something, didn't they?
Finally, the last time they did put me on a steroid to help with the flare-ups, but I was emotionally like really struggling because it was so maddening, and they were having me take like Zyrtec and Benadryl and all of these things to combat it, and I'm like, something is not working here. Like this is so different. My body is almost like, it felt like my body was like, I was having this reaction and then it was rejecting the embryo too. Like, and maybe that sounds crazy, but my body was like, get this out of me. Whatever it is that's making me feel this way, get it out of me.
Well, and you did it enough times that like, clearly it wasn't working.
It was not working.
There was something not jiving there. And obviously, and I had already had that experience where, so we kind of already knew when you were going through it, like I had done all those transfers and that failed. And I had tried some different things, different oils and the progesterone and oil and then suppository, like it just nothing ended up working.
So those reactions led me to kind of the reverse of Hilary. It led me to doing a natural transfer that my doctor actually promoted, because we have embryos and we were like, we want to use these embryos. We are committed to them. We want to have a baby. However, like we're not going to keep doing this and putting my body through all these reactions. And so she was finally like, okay, if you want to try a natural cycle, like I'll do whatever you want to do, which was so the opposite.
Surprising.
And honestly, like 3 transfers before that, I don't think she would have ever recommended a natural transfer. But simultaneously, it's just the way that the Lord works, because for me, I was really struggling with all the hormones and everything that I was putting into my body. And the more research I was doing, the more uncomfortable I was with all of it. And so it led me down this rabbit trail of health and wellness and what's best for my body. And it was like, I don't want to put all this in me, and I want to see what my body can do and see if my body can support this embryo on its own.
Well, and even the idea that your body can do it without all those drugs, like that was very surprising. And again, everybody's different, and different people need different things. But like there was a part, like even once you got that figured out, like even for me, I struggled a little bit with like, I should have done that. Like I should have tried a natural cycle, or, which it doesn't matter now, like what's done is done. But there's like a frustrating piece of like, I don't feel like the doctors ever really presented that as an option. Like we actually had found that out through other means of research, not really being told that initially by the doctors. Like that was something we talked about before your doctor like approved it. You know what I mean?
Before she said,
and so.
Because I was afraid to bring it up to her. I remember it was like, okay, I'm going to have this appointment with my doctor. I'm going to bring up the idea of a natural cycle. I'm nervous. I don't know what she's going to say.
You have to like psych yourself out to tell them, because you know that they're going to come against you, which is not a good thing.
You know that there is a piece, and it's hard to not feel this or worry about this, but there's a piece of knowing that they care about success rate, because it does look good for them and their clinic. And so we have seen that shift in being at our clinic for 10 years of feeling a little bit like we were heard and we had control, to we're cows being led into
we're just a number.
Like, and that's been a little bit challenging to see happen, but has also made us want to like regain the control a little bit too, and be like, no, I am going to fight back on this, and I am going to like advocate for what I think is best for my body, and it's my dollars that I'm okay with spending. And they bring that up too. They'll say like, well, you want to pay money for like the potential of not using medication, and it's being able to say like, no, I am okay with that. And so that led me then to doing a natural transfer, which was a positive experience.
Another experience that I have referenced before was that after we did all of our frozen embryo transfers that failed, we actually did go back and do one cycle of INVOcell, which had no idea even what that was until I just was looking. I mean, truly my motivation was trying to find cheaper options for IVF because we did not want to create a bunch of embryos. Like we were,
which you landed on finding out about mini IVF first, which neither of us had ever heard of either.
We started there, but then once we got down to the bare bones of it all, they were like, this isn't actually cheaper, even though they promoted it on their website that it was going to be cheaper, and it maybe was like a couple $1,000s cheaper. But when you're talking about $15,000, that I was like, they said significantly cheaper, and I was like, I don't feel like $2,000 out of $15,000 is significantly cheaper, but I guess it's a matter of opinion.
Right.
Anyways, so I had left my initial clinic, tried a different clinic for this mini IVF process, and I had a good experience with them, but ultimately like the money factor just was too much.
Yeah.
And so ended up going to a different clinic to pursue INVOcell, which I'm sure a lot of people don't know. The process of INVOcell is where you still do an egg retrieval and you take the egg and the sperm, and there's a device that like literally it's a device about this big that they put the egg and sperm into the device, and they put the device into your vagina right up against your cervix and basically put almost like a Diva cup or something to like suction and hold it up against your cervix. And it's in there for 5 days. It can be 3 to 5 days depending on what your doctor recommends. And it just sits in there. And then you go back after your allotted time. So for me, it was 5 days. Go back. They take the INVOcell out and they take it into the lab and they just check to see if anything came of it.
So your body is incubating.
Exactly. So it takes out the lab portion. Like normally all of that growing is done in the lab. And so you can actually grow it inside of your body. My doctor, we felt very strongly about not creating a lot of embryos. So we were only willing to put in 2 eggs when we did INVOcell. And so again, I had a situation where the doctor said, I don't think this is going to work. I would think, yes, it's your chances are not good because of my age, because of my fails, because of, she would have recommended getting at least like 6 eggs and trying to fertilize all of them, but we just weren't willing to risk that. And so, and we were okay again with, here's what it costs. And in total, probably without testing, was $6,000. So that was significantly cheaper, actually. And so what happened then when they took the INVOcell out and checked it, like our embryos had stopped growing at 3 days, and so they were not viable and were no longer growing and dividing cells. And so we didn't do a transfer then at that point, obviously, because we had nothing viable to transfer. And so I actually was refunded, like I think $3,000 because we didn't get to that point. So it ended up being a really good financial option for us.
Yeah.
And it was just something we had never heard of, knew nothing about. And you do have to qualify for it. There are certain, in mini IVF and for INVOcell, it's not necessarily for everyone, but for most healthy people, it would be an option.
Yeah. And an option that can be maybe considered more ethical because you have a little more control. You're not making as many embryos. You're not retrieving as many eggs.
Yeah.
You for INVOcell, you just used what, Clomid? Or was it letrozole or something? It was an oral medication.
Yes, it was. I don't remember which one, but yes.
Yeah,
yes, I still did a trigger shot to right before they did the egg retrieval to make sure we were ready to ovulate.
Right.
But yeah, minimal medication. It was just very different, very different experience and process. And obviously we did not have success with that, but a lot of people have. So.
And you would speak highly of that clinic as far as being heard, listened to.
Yes. And I mean, I don't know, this makes me sound like, does this make me sound like an idiot? Because all these doctors are like, don't do this. And I do it anyway.
Continue to do it anyway.
But it just comes back to that idea of the importance of making your own decisions and
researching.
It's easy for a doctor to just say like, statistically, this is what works. And I'm a smart person. I understand that. But for us, like statistics weren't everything. And that's where we had moral concerns. We had convictions and things that we felt led by the Holy Spirit. Like this is what we need to do. And whether, even though the outcome wasn't what we wanted, like we know that it was what God's plan was for us. And we were okay with that. And part of that was like even communicating with my doctor, like if this fails, like I am not going to be upset with you. I am not going to blame you. I so appreciate you telling me truly what you think, but I also appreciate you leaving it in my hands to say like, it's my decision to make. It's not your decision. And just for our experiences, like being able to compare those, it doesn't feel good to have someone telling you have to do this. This is what's right. And feeling like you don't have the same convictions that I have.
Yes.
You don't
Knowing
know
their heart is coming from a completely different place.
Yes. And again, I think that their motives were good. I think that their intentions for us were good. But when you're going through this kind of thing, like, you just really need to know that you're staying true to what you feel led to do. And even sometimes that doesn't make sense. And I don't have any regrets about those things.
I think our final encouragement is just the reminder that everyone's journey looks so different. Even though ours looks alike in a lot of ways, like, there are so many tiny details that look so very different. So making sure that you are pursuing the Lord and leaning into his heart and accepting the Holy Spirit's guidance and what's best for you, you're going to feel empowered to know that the choices that you are making, the decisions you're choosing in your fertility journey are his will for you. And I think we've both learned to just be okay to stand our ground and to pursue what we think is best for our journey, even when it feels crazy.
And I think too, just the reality of, we want to share our experience because we have learned so much along the way. Like we said, when we started our IVF journey versus where we ended up, there was just so much we didn't know. And so I think part of us sharing this is just, shining a light on the fact that, we've done this kind of IVF, we've done INVOcell, we've done a natural cycle. There are options. And so we just want to encourage people, seek that out, research what your options are. Don't feel stuck at the clinic that you're at.
Yes, choose a different one if you need to.
There are different places that offer different things and different doctors that are going to relate to you in a different way and be more honoring of your desires. And so I guess that's part of our encouragement as well, is just, don't be afraid to look at options. Don't be afraid to try different things. And again, all of that, keeping in mind what Jess said about staying in tune with the Holy Spirit and being prayerful about those decisions. But there is just so much more out there than we ever realized in the beginning.
Right.